Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about reviewing dividing whole numbers by unit fractions and unit fractions by whole numbers. Remember that when we do this, we are supposed to be doing it with a model, so you need to keep that in mind as we're going throughout. I know by now probably some of you have found a trick or a tip that you think will work, and that's fine, but please remember that you are going to be asked to identify the models. So make sure that you're paying close attention to the models as well, okay? We're going to start first by reviewing a whole number by a unit fraction. So I'm going to use the problem 4 divided by 1/5. And remember that the 4 represents how much I have, and the 1/5 represents the groups. So in order to model this problem, the first thing that I have to do is I've got to represent my whole number, which is 4. And I need to represent my whole number by drawing 4 models, which I'm going to use rectangles for. So I'm going to draw 4 rectangles. Okay. Now, there are my 4 rectangles, and now I have to take these 4 rectangles and I have to divide them into my fractional amount. In this problem, my fractional amount is fifths. So I've got to take them with my purple marker and I'm going to split them into fifths. Oh, purple marker doesn't work. Guess I won't be using that one. Let's try green. So here are my 4 rectangles, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now each of these pieces that are inside of each rectangle, each represent 1/5. And when I put 5/5 together, I get 1 whole. So in order to find my quotient to this problem, I have to count how many total pieces I have. So I'm going to go ahead and count. Inside of these 4 rectangles, I have a total of 20 pieces. Therefore, my quotient to 4 divided by 1/5 is 20. Now, I can also take this problem and I can represent it on a number line. This type of model is what we call an area model, okay? So I'm going to erase my area model and I'm going to replace my area model with a number line. On my number line, I still have to remember that I have to represent my whole number being 4. So I'm going to start my number line at 0 and my number line has to end at 4. From in between 0 and 4, I have to account for the other whole numbers that are between 0 and 4. So that would be 1, 2, and 3. Okay? Now, just like I did in my area model where I took my rectangles and split them into fifths, I have to cut my number line into fifths as well. So, with my green marker, I'm going to go ahead and take it and cut it into fifths. So, if I had to place fractional amounts on this number line, this would be 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5. 1 is the same thing as the fraction 5/5. Then, as we go, this would be 1 1/5, a mixed number, 1 2/5, 1 3/5, 1 4/5, 1 5/5. Okay, so on and so forth down the line until we got to 4. Now, in order to find my quotient from the number line, I have to see how many hops I have to take. So I use a frog in order to demonstrate that. And my frog is going to hop down my number line. So I'm going to start here at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I took 20 hops, and therefore my quotient is 20. Okay, let's try one more problem like that, and I'll do an area model and a number line model. So let's use the problem (3 divided by 1/2). For my area model, I'm going to need 3 rectangles. So I'm going to go ahead and draw those here. And then I'm going to need to split those 3 rectangles up into what fractional piece? I'm going to have to split it up into halves. So I'm going to split it right down the center to where I have 2 pieces inside of each rectangle. Now, I've got to count my pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My quotient here would be 6. And I can do the same thing with a number line as well. Again, I've got to start at 0 and I've got to end at 3, but I've also got to make sure I put my 1 and my 2 in there as well. Again, each place in between my whole number, I'm going to split into half. So I'm going to create 2 pieces. And then my frog, starting at 0, is going to jump to 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My answer to this problem is 6. Now, most recently we've talked about dividing unit fractions by whole numbers. And this is a little bit different from whole numbers by unit fractions. We're going to practice with the problem 1/4 divided by 3. In this problem, my 1/4 represents how much I have. I have 1/4. And my 3 represents how many are in each group or how many groups I have. So, if I'm solving this with a area model, the first thing that I have to have is I have to have something that represents 1/4. Well, 1/4 is a fractional amount. It's less than 1. So I don't need 4 models to represent this. I only need 1 model. So this time I'm just going to draw one big square. And with my black marker, I've got to take that square and I've got to break it into 1/4 pieces. So I'm going to go this way and break it into fourths. So I have 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, and 1/4. Okay, there's my 1/4 fractional amount represented. With my green marker, I've got to then divide my 1/4 into 3 groups. So horizontally, I'm going to split my 1/4 by 3. So I would cut it there, that represents 1, there, that represents 2, and this down here is 3. Now, where in the other type of problem, I would just count how many boxes, this is a little bit different because each of these boxes don't represent a whole number. I started off with 1/4, so it only is going to represent a fractional amount. So I do need to know the total number of boxes that I have in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I have 12 boxes, but the quotient is found in what one of those boxes represents. So this one box right here represents the fraction 1/12. This box is 1/12, this box is 1/12, this box is 1/12, 1/12, 1/12, 1/12, 1/12, 1/12, 1/12, 1/12, and 1/12. Therefore, my answer is going to be found inside of one of those boxes. One of those boxes represents 1/12, therefore my answer is 1/12. Now again, we can model this on a number line as well. This time, because we're dealing with our fractional amount first, I only have to label from 0 to 1. When I label it from 0 to 1, I then got to go back and represent the fractional amounts of force in between 0 and 1. So I would have 1/4, 2/4, and 3/4. Then, within those fractional amounts, I've got to take it and break them up by 3s. So, I've got to take and split where I have 3 pieces inside of my 1/4. 3 pieces inside, in between 1/4 and 2/4, 3 pieces in between 2/4 and 3/4, and 2 pieces in between 0 or 3/4 and 1. In order to know what one of these fractional amounts represents, I've got to count the lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So therefore this one piece right here would represent 1/12, and that would be my answer. Okay, let's try another one with the area model like this. If I have 1/2 divided by 5, okay, because I'm starting with that fractional piece, I only need one model as a representation. So I'm going to draw my one model here. This time it's going to look a little bit like a rectangle. And I've got to take that one model and I've got to split it in half. So I've got to cut it into my fractional amount. Now that I have something that represents 1/2 and 1/2, I've got to take and cut each of my halves into 5 pieces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now remember, my answer isn't how many total pieces I have. My answer is what one of those pieces represents as a fraction. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pieces. One of these pieces right here is going to represent the fraction 1/10. It's one piece out of 10 total pieces. So 1/2 divided by 5 equals 1/10. Okay, let's try another one. One third divided by 6. So again, I have my fractional amount first. With that fractional amount, I'm only going to need one model. And I've got to cut it into thirds first. So I'm going to go ahead and represent my 1/3. Then, because I'm dividing by my whole number 6, I've got to split it into 6. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, again, I need to know my total number of pieces for my denominator. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I have 18 total pieces, and one of those pieces represents 1/18, which would be my whole number, or which would be my numerator. Now, keeping this fraction up here, I'm going to put what I would call the opposite fraction. So I'm going to start with my 6 and divide it by my 1/3. We know by now, hopefully, that 6 divided by 1/3, the answer would be 18. What are the differences between these two problems? So I start with a whole number here, where I start with a fraction here. Then I have my fraction, then I have my whole number. The difference between my answers is one's a unit fraction and the other one's a whole number. Whenever you start with a unit fraction, you're going to end with a unit fraction. And a unit fraction is a fraction that has a numerator of 1. Whenever you start with a whole number, you are going to end with a whole number. So please keep that in mind as you're going throughout continuing to divide unit fractions and whole numbers. Make sure that you ask your teacher if you have any questions.